Hi everybody. So after making that video at Gallatin, my wife and I decided to come over here to Adam-ondi-Ahman. It's a really pretty time of day and a really pretty time of year. It's fall and the sun is starting to go down. And I realized I haven't made a video over here at Spring Hill Summit. So when you go through the entrance, there's two places that you can go. You can go to the left to the valley overlook. You can go to the right, which leads you to Tower Hill. And as you're on your way to Tower Hill, you come across this sign that says Spring Hill Summit. Once you get past this sign, there's a T in the road. You go to the left, and that takes you to Tower Hill. The reason why I want to do a video here is because I think this is one of the potential sites for the temple. When you read in Sacred Places, Missouri, it talks about the fact that there is some uncertainty about where the temple was going to be built. It seems that the consensus is that it is further that way, still on Spring Hill, just not at the summit. When you go to the Tower Hill parking lot area, you go down the trail and you follow it, and then you go past Preacher's Rock and you end up going over to Spring Hill, where you have all the markers over there. And you see the markers for, you know, cabins, like you have the cabin site for the stake president, John Smith, who was Joseph Smith's uncle. You have the blacksmith shop and a tailor shop and all this stuff. So in the middle of all that, you have marker number 10 that says public square and religious site. And it does seem like that's where the temple was supposed to be built. It will be built in the future. But this is an alternate site, and I'm going to read you what I think might be the only evidence for that. There may be more, but this comes from Life of Heber C. Kimball, pages 221 to 222. Now, before I read this, get a good look of the surrounding area, and, you know, being at the summit, you have a pretty good view of the surrounding area. Well, this is what Heber C. Kimball said, speaking about Adam-ondi-Ahman. While there, we laid out a city on a high elevated place of land and set the stakes for the four corners of a temple block, which was dedicated, Brother Brigham Young being mouth. There were from 300 to 500 men present on the occasion under arms. This elevated spot was probably 250 to 500 feet above the level of Grand River, so that one could look east, west, north, or south as far as the eye could reach. It was one of the most beautiful places I ever beheld. So if you watched my videos where we went to marker number 10, or if you've been there yourself, you cannot look north, south, east, and west as far as the eye can reach. But you can up here. You're looking at it right now. So let's see, this way is south, that's east, and then north and west. And sure enough, you can see as far as the eye can reach. So, you know, I'm not really rigid when it comes to these type of things. If it turns out that the temple was supposed to be here, it will be built here in the future, then so be it. That's fine. It reminds me a little bit of Nauvoo. Now, I haven't really looked into the history of Nauvoo at this point. I have been up there a few times because it's only like 4.5 hours away from Independence, so we've made a few day trips. The way that it stands right now, the Nauvoo temple is on a high elevated place, and then historic Nauvoo, at least like the bulk of it, is downhill from the temple. And you have that same kind of configuration here. So imagine that the temple was standing right here, just like the Nauvoo temple, if you're familiar with the Nauvoo area. So say, well, let's see, say that the temple is facing east, okay? And then down that way, and then down Spring Hill, that's where all those markers are. And it seems like that's where like most of the city was being built. So kind of like Nauvoo. Now in the case of Nauvoo, I don't know if in like when it was first built, if the temple was like the central block, like if that was like the kind of like the town square area, or if the central block / town square, if there is one, if it was more where everybody else was living down the hill. Maybe if you have information about that, you can let me know. But anyway, I could see that. I could see the temple being right here at Spring Hill Summit, and then the town just kind of being down in this area over here, and kind of being like Nauvoo. I do think it's interesting that Brigham Young, of all people, dedicated the site. And I'm excited to see that temple built in the future. It's one of 4 temples that were supposed to be built in Missouri, and that will be built in the future. This is according to President David O. McKay and his counselor, President Alvin R. Dyer. You can find this in the David O. McKay diaries, and I think it's talked about in Alvin R. Dyer's book called Refiner's Fire. But the 4 temples are the Temple of the City of Zion, or New Jerusalem in Independence, Missouri, and then Far West, and then Adam-ondi-Ahman, and the 4th one being the City of Seth Temple. The City of Seth never got built. It was identified just before the Saints were driven out of Missouri, and it's basically the location for the city is between here and Far West. And in the 60s and 70s, President Alvin R. Dyer said that the 4 areas that the church should focus on at that time, as they were purchasing land here at Adamondi-Ahman, building the Independence Visitor Center, beautifying Far West, the 4 places that the church was supposed to focus on are those 4 places I mentioned: Independence, Far West, Adam-ondi-Ahman, and the City of Seth. I'm not aware that they did anything with the City of Seth. I'm not sure what they would do other than just purchase land, but I'm sure that it has a glorious future, and that temple will be built one day. Wow, look at those clouds up there. This is a really pretty location right here. As you look at all around to the horizon, it's beautiful. So, and here's one thing to keep in mind as well. I'm not going to read it, but it's actually part of that. No, you know what? I am going to read it. I am going to read it. So this is right after the part that I just read. The prophet Joseph called upon Brother Brigham, myself, and others, saying, "Brethren, come go along with me, and I will show you something." He led us a short distance to a place where the ruins of 3 altars built of stone, one above the other, and one standing a little back of the other, like unto the pulpits in the Kirtland Temple, representing the order of 3 grades of priesthood. There, said Joseph, is the place where Adam offered up sacrifice after he was cast out of the garden. The altar stood at the highest point of the bluff. I went and examined the place several times while I remained there. So this is not referring to the altar site on Tower Hill. On Tower Hill, you have the site that Joseph Smith identified as the place of Adam's altar of prayer, and also the Nephitish altar, because I guess it was later used by the Nephites. But over on Spring Hill, you had this altar made of the 3 big stones, or like they're the 3 altars that look like the pulpits of the Kirtland Temple, and this was the altar of sacrifice. So it was not far from the place that the temple block was dedicated, and so if this is the actual site of the temple, then that altar, you know, it would have been somewhere around here. So that's something interesting to think about as well. I don't know if you can see the cattle over there across the road. I haven't really filmed over here, but as you're driving into Adamondi-Ahman and going to one of the 2 locations, you see lots of cattle and crops and stuff like that, because the church allows, I guess, local ranchers and farmers to use the land. What's that say? Farmers, and then has a phone number, and then like a, maybe like a serial number for this pole. Not sure. But yeah, it's just, it's so pretty over here. I love it. If you keep going down that road, that takes you to Jameson, which is the closest town to here. It's just a tiny, tiny little town. It can't be more than just a few hundred people. Gallatin, like I said in that video, but in case you didn't watch it, Gallatin is larger. It has about 2,000 people. But yeah, I always love coming up to this area. I love Gallatin. I love Adamondi-Ahman. At some point, we're going to make our way over to Millport and see if we can find some significant sites over there. Oh, and actually, there's something over here I want to see. I don't know what that is. Is that just like one of those power box things? Yeah, I think it is. Sorry, I was hoping maybe it was like a headstone or something like that, but no, it's just a modern day electrical thing. Anyway, that's gonna be it for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.